Hello, friends. What a thought-provoking week we've had studying the first two chapters of Exodus. I'd like us to focus today on the first question posed by the author of the Bible Study Guide. And it's a question I've asked myself so many times. Why did God allow the Hebrews to live in Egypt and be oppressed? And why did it take so long for God to intervene on their behalf? Truth be told, according to biblical chronology, only 64 years passed between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses. But that's an entire lifetime. And if that's your lifetime, it's an entire lifetime of suffering. And when you cry out to God over and over again, and he seems to be silent or absent, you seriously start questioning whether God is even real or interested in your suffering. And that leads us to the age-old question, if God is a God of love, why does he allow suffering? In fact, if we go back in history, in Genesis 15, Abram has a dream or a vision where God talks to him very specifically about the future of his descendants. He tells Abram, in the strongest possible language of which Hebrew is capable, that Abram would remain a wanderer for as long as he lived, as well as his unborn descendants for 4 generations. So fast forward to the Israelites' captivity in Egypt. That time was coming up to completion, and it seemed God wasn't working. Ellen White states that God revealed to the elders of Israel at the time that Moses would deliver them from the bondage of Egypt, but the elders didn't understand it. And nothing was working out the way it seemed it was supposed to work out. Once again, many years are passed over in silence. A former prince of the most powerful royal house of the time was passing his days as a shepherd. He had exchanged his palace for a tent, the luxuries of Egypt for the desert life of Sinai, his host of attendants and his army for a flock of sheep and goats. What a change! Yet 40 years spent in the wide spaces of the desert made of him the sort of man God could use in the deliverance of his people from Egypt. During these years, Moses learned lessons essential to him as the leader of a rebellious nation. The qualities Moses developed during his long years of desert life, alone with God and nature, were priceless and well worth the long solitude and humiliation required to gain them. His later history shows that those years had not been lost, but that he had been a diligent student under the tutorship God and had graduated from his course with honors. And that's part of the answer as to why God allows his people to suffer. Because growth and change mostly take place out of our zones of comfort and through hardship. Because in hindsight, everything makes sense. And we realize that going through that situation made us who we are today. And so with that, we conclude our study for this week. Thank you for joining me, and stay tuned for next week's study. And remember to join your local Sabbath school this Sabbath to deepen your study of the Word of God. God bless.